This episode is brought to you by the Canine Chronicles. That is my weekly email newsletter. If you're not on it, why not? Why not? Did you know that you can reach out to me and ask me questions? You can. Get on that newsletter. We'll talk more about that in a second. But this particular question came from Susanne, and she wrote, "Thank you for the newsletter." You're welcome. Is this podcast going to be a barking series? Ooh, good questions. I have a problem with my dog as he barks in the car, not randomly, but when someone is close or approaching the car, or if I get pulled over asking for directions. It's the "get away, this is my car" bark, and it's super annoying because it's so close to me, and I get all hectic, and I try to pull on his collar, and it's just chaos, right? That's our life. He's 8 months old. We are in the car a lot, traveling long distance, so he is not in a crate. This is a great question. Thank you, Susanne. It inspired me to continue our barking. Now it's a series because barking is a big question. So let's get into it. This week, the reason why your dog goes bananas in the car and 3 ways that you can help your dog feel safe. Let's get into it. Are you worried that your fearful dog may hurt someone or something else? Do you have to prepare just to take a walk around the block? Hi, I'm Tracy, and I too had that dog. The one that you could only walk at nighttime when no one else was around. And I felt ashamed, and oh gosh, I wish that people could just see the dog that I know and love. I wanted the confidence to be able to walk my dog and not have to worry about who or what was around the corner. And I kept telling myself that if I just keep doing obedience drills and distracting with treats, that things would get better. Until I found the secret. Fear is not something that you can train out of a dog. In this podcast, you will find tips to help build your dog's confidence naturally, communication and understanding to foster that trust, and how to address those fear-based behaviors effectively so that you can enjoy a stress-free life with your dog. So if you're ready, stop chopping those chicken wieners, grab your notebook, and let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to Beyond Obedience. I am Tracy. I am your host of this podcast, and we are talking about barking. Oh, I should have known this was going to be a series because barking is such a multifaceted thing. Now, I want to remind you before people start sending me in questions about barking when you are not at home that my specialty, the thing that I focus on more than anything, the thing that I love more than anything, is the canine-human bond, that connection between human and dog. So the work that I do is when you are there, when you are able to influence your dog's behavior. So I'm not the best expert to talk about what to do if your dog is barking when you're not home, or in particular, separation anxiety. That's not going to be my forte. My hope, my friends, is if we can get this podcast out to more and more people, I will find the separation anxiety experts and have them on the podcast. Won't that be great? I'm so excited to get into those kind of things and bring more people out, because here's the reality of it. There's no expert on all things dogs. There really isn't. Right? This is a lifelong journey. I am constantly learning. I'm constantly taking seminars online and in person. I want to know as much as I can so that I can bring more and more to my friends here on the podcast, in particular you, my friend. And so this is why I'm straight up honest with you guys. My stuff, the work that I do, is about you, the person, and the bond that you connect with your dog. So when we're talking about barking, these are all tips and techniques for when you are there. All right. I just want to get that out of the way because I know I've been, reminding people that if you are not on the list, let me ask you, are you on the list? Are you on the mailing list, the Canine Chronicles? That's that weekly list, That's the weekly email that's going to come to your inbox. One, it's going to remind you of the podcast, let you know what's happening this week on the podcast, but it also includes questions of the week. Sometimes it includes fun videos. It's really a fun little thing. It's the best way for us to stay connected. And the reason why I want to do that is because I love my community. I do love my social media community, but social media can go away. I just don't want to lose track. I don't want to lose track of you. So let's make sure that you're on that email list so that we can always stay connected. It's a great way to get in touch. It's a great way to ask me questions, or you might be featured on this podcast like Susanne. First and foremost, here's the thing. I want you to understand from the dog's perspective, the reason why barking in your car is happening and why it is so difficult for us to manage. Okay. So I want you to think everything, honestly, about how the dog perceives the world. And when we're talking about how dogs perceive the world, their thing is based in survival. Right? They are based in all things survival. So you're going to hear me as time goes on. If you've been following me on social media, you've probably seen some posts on this. If you've been a member of Living Beyond Obedience, my Facebook community, you've probably heard posts like this. But I've talked a lot about this idea of threats and analyzing threat levels. Okay, that part of our role as a good guide to our dog, guiding our dogs through Humansville, is the ability to analyze threat levels from a dog's perspective. Now, that's not justifying or logically thinking through threat levels. I'm actually want you to sort of get a little bit more primal when we're thinking about it and actually think of it from the dog's point of view. Part of that point of view is seeing the world through their eyes, the fact that they are lower or shorter to the ground, how they perceive things, right? A human being walking up to you as another human being may not be as threatening as a human being walking up to your Dachshund who's down at the ground level. That's really, really intimidating, right? So I want you to kind of start to observe the world around you and think of it from your dog's point of view. And bonus points if you take some time to actually do it. And my my clients, and especially my members in Relationship Remedy, know that I will get you to get down on the ground, get down at the level of the dog, and actually just be quiet for a moment, observe the world while sitting on the ground beside your dog. You'll have a much greater perspective of how your dog sees the world, and it's so beneficial. So let's talk about the car then, okay? When we're talking about the car, from the vantage point and viewpoint of your dog, thinking about survival, I want you to sit in your car, wherever you put the dog. If you put them in the back seat, I want you to sit in the back seat, and I want you to look at the car from the dog's perspective. What is happening right now? Right? If you're in the car right now driving, please don't do this. Right? Don't do it while you're driving. But if you can, take some time. You can imagine it, sure. You can sit down and imagine it right now. But if you want double points, bonus points, get in the car and actually look. Okay? I want you to look around you, sit at the level the dog would sit, right? And look around your car. What is this? Put your hand up if you've gotten it, right? You are literally sitting in a box and you're trapped. And you have, in most car cases, you have access points where potential threats can get you from all around you. If you're sitting in the back seat, they can come in either the side doors. If you have a hatchback, I have a minivan, so someone can open up the back of the minivan and come and get you from behind. They can come in through the front doors. They can come in at you. If you've got a like a skylight or one of those, I don't have one of those. They're not called skylights. What are they called, Tracy? Not sun visors. Oh my gosh, what are they called? You know what I'm talking about. Moonroofs, sunroofs. Oh my gosh, sunroofs, moonroofs, whatever you want to call them. Wow, that took me a while to get that. That took me a while to get that word. But if you have a sunroof and you open the sunroof, imagine that for your dog. Oh, now you have things that could come down from the sky and get you. So many threat levels at all angles, all edges, and you are trapped. You are in a box. You are in a trapped box with glass all around where threats can come at you everywhere. And this is one of the main reasons why, especially if you have an a naturally or innately unconfident dog, or a dog that has had some sort of past trauma, this is why this is going to amplify some anxieties and whatnot in the dog. Okay, that's the first thing. So now that you've sort of and if you can, please tell me, let me know if you've done this. Let me know if you sat in your car and actually looked around and went, oh my, oh my, things can get me from all angles. That's the first thing. Okay. Oh my gosh, I didn't tell my story. Oh, I didn't tell my story. Should I tell my story now? I should have told my story. I can't believe I forgot my story. The reason why I know this. I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you my story in a second. Let me just get through this. I'll tell you my story. You'll love it. It's a story where I got a ticket. So that's threat levels, right? That's a lot. That's like heightened expressed threat levels and threats coming at you at all angles. Here's the other reason why. Now, there's two sides of this. So in particular, I'm talking about perhaps dogs that are unconfident. In the case of Susanne, let me just bring her thing up again. What did I say? He is 8 months old. Oh my goodness. He's 8 months old. So that means that he's an adolescent. He's just starting to figure things out. Hormones might be playing a factor there. He could be going through a fear period. All sorts of things might be going on. But the bottom line is he's an 8-month-old dog who's stuck in a box with lots of different threats. And he might be freaking out. All right, so that's the first reason why. Okay, that's the first reason why. The second reason why, and this might be something that we maybe don't think about a lot, and I mentioned this before, is that I like to talk about our influence over our dog's behavior, creating a bond and connection where we can positively influence our dog's behavior. And the problem that happens is that we can't influence our dog's behavior when we are distracted or sitting down in our car, right? So there's two different types of dogs here that, can be barky. I usually am talking about, the unconfident dog that is barking because he feels threatened. But even with our dogs that are, let's say, confident, they're still going to feel threatened. They're still trapped in a box. Okay. So if you have a confident dog that is barking and you're not able to influence their behavior, they recognize that you too are trapped in a box, right? And you are not going to be able to effectively deal with threats in your current position. Okay. They know that first of all, dogs already know in general that human beings are not really quick to get up and address threats if we're seated, right? If we're sitting down, we can't get up and address things very well or very quickly. And dogs learn that pretty quick. Like they are like, I know that you have my back. You say those things and I trust you and all of that good stuff. But the bottom line is if you're down, it's going to take you a bit to get up to go and actually address that threat. Right? Dogs know that. So when we're in the car, it's a lot harder for us to influence their behavior because dogs know from I was going to say examples, but basically from experience that you're not as effective when you're sitting down. So not only are we trapped in a box, but you're seated. You're seated. I'm really struggling with English today. I'm just going to leave these. I mean, a perfectionist would probably be like, you should start over, Tracy. This got away on you. But you know what? I'm going to leave it. Okay. So they know from experience that you're not great when you're in a seated position. You're not as great as dealing with threats. So they're going to up their game, right? They know, they're like, you can't do this. I mean, when you consider it, look at how quickly your dog can jump from the front seat to the back seat, from window to window to window. You're not doing that. You're strapped in with a seatbelt. You're not going to be able to address anything, So they're going to take that role. Okay, I think this is one of the most common misconceptions, especially, and people will, I guess, maybe question my stuff in the same regard when I talk about leadership, and I always talk about leadership in the form of guidance and all of that stuff. But they'll say, like, the dominance and hierarchy and all of that stuff is not valid anymore. But the bottom line is, it is still valid. It's just that dogs that are pro-social will shift positions based on who's better at that skill set, right? So just because your dog is now taking a more authoritative role trying to ward off threats in your car does not mean that they don't think you're a good leader or that you're not a good guide for them. It's just that they know your limitations. They know you're not really great at protecting the pack right now in this position. Okay, so that's where things get a little bit different for them. So I'm struggling with that. You're in a seated position. You're strapped in. You're probably wearing your seatbelt. Threats are coming, and you can't do anything about it. So he's going to step up. He's going to up his ante. Okay, so that's the sort of the second side of this, the reason why your dog is going bananas in the car. There's high threat levels, and your influence is next to nil in this situation. Your dog knows you're not great at being able to do what you need to do in their mind. Let's keep that in mind, in their mind. Okay, words here aren't going to help you. Honestly, words aren't going to help you in this. You can't be like, it's fine. You're good, right? Let me tell you the story really quick before I forget, because I don't want to forget this story. This is a great story. When I was in college, I was going through to be a vet tech, and I was in college, and I had my dog, Wally, with me. And I was coming home the one day from school, and Wally was in the back seat of my very, very sporty Geo Metro. God, I love that car. And I got pulled over. I got pulled over by the police, and because I had an expired license plate sticker. Wah wah. So I get pulled over, and immediately as I see the police officer coming up beside my car, Wally starts freaking out. And I hadn't even really seen this behavior in him. Wally was like my childhood dog. We grew up in the country. We didn't really take him anywhere. It wasn't until I was like, I'm going to take him to college with me, that he was ever really in the car. So I had never experienced this behavior when somebody was approaching the car. So I'm looking at my dog, and I'm like, he's just going out of his mind, and he was freaking out. So as the policeman starts to come up to the window, I immediately, before he got to say anything, I said, I'm sorry, my dog is really, really upset. Do you mind just sort of taking a step back? And I don't think he liked that. I don't think he liked me telling him how this should go. And so he kind of was like, no. And then he proceeded to lean into the window, his arm kind of resting on the window, to which I kind of leaned back again, trying to indicate perhaps maybe this wasn't the best idea, because, and I was like, I have a dog. And obviously that was a dumb thing to say, because you could hear I had a dog. And before I knew it, Wally had reached up behind my head, sort of in between my head and the seatbelt, and grabbed the officer's arm. Ouch. Now, I will say nothing, like he didn't break the skin or whatnot. The police officer was wearing a very, very thick jacket, and but it did sort of startle him. Long story short, I got a ticket. There was no talking my way out of that one. I couldn't bat my eyes and talk my way out of that one for sure, because, I think I embarrassed him. My dog was a menace, all of that good stuff. And I'm just grateful, actually, that that's all that happened, that there wasn't anything else beyond that. He didn't say anything to, would happen to the dog. He just gave me the ticket for the expired sticker, and off I went. So I know about the crazy banana dog and why it would do that. And he had never, ever in his life done anything like that at that point in time. So that's where I wanted to share that story, because when Suzanne was writing me, I was like, I can imagine what was going on, especially if you're pulling over asking for directions and your dogs are going bananas, right? So let's talk about, what can you do about it? What can we do about our dog that is freaking out? Well, the very first thing, and I know Suzanne mentioned it, and she said that she can't do it because it's traveling long distance, but I have to mention it anyway. The very first thing is to actually put the dog in a crate, and I'm not disregarding her objection as to not using the crate. I'm just saying my very first response would be, put the dog in a crate. Because when we're talking about threat levels, if you have a dog that is crate trained, you can then, especially if you're traveling distances and whatnot, you can then put the crate in the car, and we can create this idea that the crate is your safe space. Despite the fact that we're in a box with all these threat levels, the crate is safe. And I always recommend it being a covered crate, cover all the sides so that they can't see that they are in a box that is, with threat levels all around. But if you've done your crate training well, and you've created this safe space for your dog where they know without a shadow of a doubt, no one is going to get you in the crate, this now becomes the ideal for traveling with your dog. And I think I have a video that I did on this, and maybe I'll see if I can find it to put it in the Canine Chronicles when we send that out. But I talk about the fact that in my car I have dogs that aren't in crates, and the one that is in a crate right now is my Jack Russell Terrier. Why? One, because she's a puppy and she's a little bit banana beans, but two, she's not fearful. She's actually quite confident, but she's triggered by motion, right? She's triggered by motion. So seeing things going by is going to engage that prey drive, and it's going to make her bananas. So I want to set her up to succeed. So she actually stays in a crate. And because we have done all of the necessary things to crate train her, to create this safe space for her, she doesn't care that she's in a crate. We put her in her crate. We go to the car. We put her in her crate. She passes out. She sleeps. Every time we check on her, she's lying on her back, feet up in the air. She is happy. And we are too, right? Because we don't have to worry about a banana beans little Jack Russell running around our car. So that's going to be your first line of defense, right? It's a safe space. No one's going to bother you here. It's creating this idea that even though we're in a box with all these threats, you are safe. Okay. And then the other thing would be, they have lots of technologies now for seat belts for dogs. The seat belt isn't going to take away the visual of the threats. Okay. That's going to do nothing for that, because the dog's still going to be able to see all the threats coming out, and they're still going to be amped up. What it does do, though, is it prevents the dog from engaging and being able to move and jump from, side to side, or jump from front to back. And that is a help, right? Anything that we can do to squash that energy of the event is going to help. It may not help barking. It may actually lead them to be, all I can do right now to tell you that I'm uncomfortable is bark. But for some dogs, just the limiting their movement will help. Okay. It prevents that energy explosion, that might happen. And then the third thing that you can do is you can start to think about the training of it. You can start to train your dog, start giving them some obedience around this area. But my suggestion to you is I want you to actually test that influence. Because although I mentioned that your influence is down because they know that in a threat situation, you aren't a great resource to be able to handle threats when you're sitting down. Ever watched a human that's sitting on the ground try to jump up and get anywhere? Right? Unless you're a kid that can jump up at the drop of a hat, we struggle with that. So although that is also an issue, I will also say that our influence is different when we're sitting down in all areas. So a fun little test for you would be to, if you're doing some obedience stuff, if you're teaching your dog, say, down, I would test it where you're sitting on a chair. Not in the car. Test it like outside of the car. Like simulate the car. Can you influence your dog's behavior from a seated position? Sit down on a chair, have your dog behind you, and ask them to down. And then you can up that ante by adding some distractions. Have people walk around or whatever, while you're in a seated position. Ask the dog to down. See where you're at, right? I think some of you are going to be surprised to find out that you have no influence when you're sitting down. It's a fun little test, to be honest with you. We are much different, and it's part of the proofing of obedience, right? Many of us, I would say 98% of the time when you're training, you're standing up. When you're teaching the commands and when you're proofing the commands, you're standing up. So try sitting down and see what happens. It might be a how interesting moment. You might be like, how interesting. When I stand, the dog does a down. When I sit down, the dog comes over and jumps in my lap. It could be a how interesting moment. I don't know. Give it a try, right? But as you're trying this, go, how interesting. I have no influence when I sit down. Let's see if I can change that. And can I start to proof this outside of the car by, basically replicating the situation, and then move to training it in the car. And you have to do things like this, like anything else, like training anything else. You'll have to do things in stages, right? Build yourself up to that. But then eventually work on in the car, sit in the car, and have people come up to your car and be able to let the dog know. Because here's the thing, dogs understand. Here's the other thing dogs know as a final thing. The other thing that dogs understand when it comes to the obedience side of it is that when we are in a car, our ability to apply consequences for not doing it is next to nothing, right? They know that we can't do anything about it. We are preoccupied. And dogs get that. They 100% get that. It's the same reason why dogs understand distance versus consequence or distance versus influence, right? The further away your dog is, the less influence you will have over their behavior, the less ability you have to apply consequences to their behavior, right? So dogs get that. That's why when we're in the car, they can get away with a lot more because they know that nothing will happen to them. So can we start to get a much more solid obedience on this? What is it that you want the dog to do instead? When someone approaches the car, what do you want them to do? What does that command look like? What does that behavior look like? And start to create that outside of the car event, then shift to doing it in the car, and then slowly shift to doing it like with the car moving, like drive to your friend's house and then have them come up to the car window in their driveway, all of that good stuff. You figure that part out, but that would be the way to do it obedience-wise. While always, and I will always mention this, keep in mind, everything that you do throughout the day is either amplifying your influence over the dog's behavior or diminishing your influence on the dog's behavior. So no matter what we're talking about, if it's walking well on a leash, if it's recall, if it's listening to you when you're in the car, every time that you are paying attention to your day-to-day and your daily interactions with your dogs, that has an influence on your dog's behavior. So you want to make sure you're checking those leadership score points, right? If you don't know what that is, find that episode on the leadership scorecard, right? You want to make sure you're keeping track of those leadership scorecard points. You want to make sure that you're being the best influence, the best guide for your dog through Humansville at all times. All right. I hope that helps. This episode, I'm not going to lie, got a little bit away on me, but I'm going to let it slide. I'm going to let it go. As always, my dog-loving friend, if you enjoyed this episode, would you mind giving me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and take 30 seconds, share it with another dog-loving friend who also wants a happy, confident dog. It lights me up to know that this podcast is helping you. So if you could do that, that would be great. And as always, get out there today and be the person that your dog thinks you are. because your dog thinks you're amazing. And so do I. See you next week. Cheers for now.